Hello everyone. In this lesson, we will set up an interior page template. What in the world do I mean by that? Well, for example, this is our home page, but when someone clicks on a generic page like About Us up in the header or Privacy Policy down in the footer, we will need a generic page template to power those pages. So in this lesson, we will work on integrating this custom design of ours into our theme's page.php file. Now, in case it wasn't clear from the last lesson, by the end of this course, we will have made everything on this homepage dynamic and be pulling from real WordPress content. But for the time being, let's leave this static homepage as a placeholder and let's focus our attention on interior pages. Okay, now let me show you what I'm referring to when I say interior page template. So in that new folder that we downloaded in our previous lesson, University Static Master, if we look inside that folder, there is a file named interior-page.html. And if we go ahead and drag that file onto a new tab in our web browser, we see a template that we can use for the majority of our WordPress pages. Now, before we start integrating this HTML into our theme, let's first jump into our WordPress admin area and let's create a couple of new pages just so you and I are synced up. So from the sidebar, let's hover over Pages and click Add New. For starters, let's create a page named About Us. And for the content, let's just say this is the About page content. And then maybe paste in a bit of lorem ipsum dummy text. And then let's save or publish this. And while we're at it, let's create another new page. So add new. And let's name this page Privacy Policy. And for the content, this is the Privacy Policy content. Lorem ipsum. Okay, go ahead and save this. And now we can use this permalink to preview the page. So here we see the title and here we see the content. So it's working, but it doesn't look quite right. This is not a very pretty page template, right? So instead we want to use this as our page template. So to do that, I want you to open up the folder that we downloaded in the last lesson and open up interiorpage.html in a text editor. All right, so towards the top of the file, right after the opening body tag, we see this header element, and we already integrated that in our previous lesson. So let's scroll down below that, and right when that header element ends, we see a new div begin that has a class of page banner. So this is where we want to begin copying and pasting. So let's place our cursor at the very beginning, right before that div opens up, and then let's scroll down, keep scrolling, and around line 68 or 70, you'll see a div with a class of page section beige, and that corresponds with this area in the template. We don't need that for now. For now, let's just copy and paste over this top section. So back in the text editor, I'm going to hold down the Shift key on my keyboard and click right here. Cool. Now with that selected, let's copy it into our clipboard. And then we want to paste it into a file that lives in our theme folder. So within your WordPress theme folder that we've been working in, go ahead and open up page.php in your text editor. Okay, so we still want to begin with our header, we still want to end with our footer, and we still want to use the while loop in between, but we don't want to output this test placeholder HTML that says, this is a page, not a post. Okay, so let's delete that line of HTML. And let's also go ahead and delete the H2 HTML headline below it. And we can also delete this PHP the content function. Okay, so at this point, we still have a while loop. We are still calling the post function, which will get all of the appropriate data ready for us from the WordPress database. We're still closing out of PHP here and opening up PHP here, which means right where my cursor is right now, we can add HTML. So just go ahead and paste in your clipboard. And if we save this and refresh in the browser within our WordPress site, back on the privacy policy page, we've got that template in place. And now we can just start hollowing out some of the static content and replace it with WordPress functions that will pull in dynamic content. For example, let's begin with this large page title headline. So up at the very top of page.php, within this page banner section, here we see an H1 headline with a hard-coded value of our history. So let's just delete our history and instead drop into PHP and call the function named the title. Cool, so if we refresh, now we see privacy policy, which makes sense since that's the page we're on. Next, let's work on hollowing out this main content field area. So back in the text editor, if we scroll down just a little bit, here we see a div with a class of generic content. And what we want to do is just delete and hollow out all of the paragraphs inside it. Okay, and instead of those hard-coded paragraphs, we just want to drop into PHP and call the function named the content. And if we save and refresh, perfect. Now we see this is the privacy policy content. Next, let's address this sidebar menu of links that we see here. We are not ready to set this up yet, so for the time being, why don't we just comment it out? Let me show you what I mean. Back in page.php, on this line where we just called the content function, right above that we see a div that has a class of page links. So this is the div that is creating that sidebar menu, and if we want to comment it out, right above it we can just say less than symbol, exclamation, dash dash. So that begins the comment, and then let's end the comment right when the div ends. So it's just dash dash greater than to end the comment. So this way we leave this code in place so we can work with it in just a couple of lessons from now. But on the front end of our website, it's now hidden. Cool. We can circle back to that menu a bit later on, but for now, the next thing I want to address is this subtitle. In a future lesson, we will learn how to set up a custom field so that each page can have its own unique subtitle here. But for now, why don't we replace this hard-coded text with a message to ourselves so we don't forget to implement that feature later on. So back in page.php of our theme folder, up at the very top, within this page banner section, we see a paragraph with that hard-coded content. And let's delete that and replace it by just saying, don't forget to replace me later. Cool. Also, regarding the plain black background of this top area, if we look at that same area within our static template that we are copying from, we see that it's supposed to use a background image of the ocean. So we need to get that image to work within our theme. And if we jump back into our text editor, up at the top of page.php, within this page banner div, we see an inline style that is trying to load an image named ocean.jpg. And the reason this isn't working is because we don't have a folder named images at the root of our domain. In reality, our images folder lives within our theme folder. So let's do this. Let's hollow out these parentheses. So delete this images ocean JPEG. And in these parentheses, let's drop into PHP and then echo out the results of a function named getThemeFileURI. And we are calling a function, so parentheses. And this function will automatically provide the beginning part of the URL that will look in WP content, themes, and then our theme name. So now we can just say, quotes, look in the images folder for ocean.jpg. Cool, so let's save this and refresh. Now in a future lesson, we will set things up so that in the admin edit page screen, you can upload a unique image for each page. But for the time being, I think this placeholder ocean image will do the trick. Okay, moving on, that leaves us only with this little breadcrumb area that we still need to address. We will circle back to this section at the very end of this lesson, but for now, let's not worry about it. What I do want to worry about right now is the title of this page that we should be seeing up here in the title of this browser tab. Now, the fact that we are seeing the URL of the page here instead of a legitimate title means that we are missing the title tag that usually lives in the head section of a website. So if that's the case, your first instinct might be to jump into your text editor and hop into our theme folder's header.php. And your instincts might be to go inside this header element and create a title tag and say, my little title. Now, technically that works, so we see the title here, but that's far from ideal because you want the title to be unique or specific for each page or post that you're viewing. So let's delete this title line. And instead, since we are already giving WordPress control over our head section with this WP head function, what we can do is jump into our theme folder's functions.php file and tell WordPress to automatically generate an appropriate title tag for each screen. So the question is, how do we tell WordPress to do something? And the answer is that you add an action. So down here, we've already added one action. And this is the event that we wanted to hook onto when our goal was to load CSS and JavaScript files. But in this case, we have a different goal. So let's drop down to the bottom here and let's add a new action. So we call the add action function. And the name of the WordPress event that we want to hook onto is after setup theme. And then let's pass this function a second argument. And this is just the name of a function that we are going to invent in about a second or two from now. So we get to make up this function name. Let's name it University Features. So we make up a name and then we just have to create a function with that name. So right above this new line that we just wrote, let's create a new line. And let's say function. We want to create a new function. We want it to be named University Features, parentheses, curly brackets. And when you want to enable a feature for your theme, the function that you call is add theme support. Now there are all sorts of different features that you can enable with this function, so we need to tell WordPress which feature in particular we're interested in. In this case, it's title tag. Okay, so with this new code in place, if we save this file and refresh the front end of our website, look up here in the top of my browser tab, privacy policy, which makes sense since we're on that page. But if we change the URL and go to About Us, cool, the title tag gets automatically generated by WordPress. Now you'll see that it's followed by a dash and then the name of our website. If you ever want to change this top level name of your website, just go into the Settings General screen of WordPress. Okay, moving on. Now that we have an About Us page and a privacy policy page, it would be nice if those links in the header and footer actually did something when you click on them. Now, in a future lesson, I will show you how to create real dynamic WordPress menus that you can control and manage from the Admin Appearance menu screen. But for now, let's just manually add those links within our header and footer theme files. Let's start with the About Us header link. So in our theme folder within header.php, just a bit down from the top, here we see the About Us link. So let's delete the placeholder hashtag, and technically we could just say /aboutus. And that works if you're using a developer domain like we are, fictionaluniversity.dev. But if you're using something like MAMP or XAMPP, you might not be using a real developer domain. And in that case, you don't want your links to just point to the root of the current domain, because you might have multiple WordPress sites all living on your one local host. So instead, a more reliable way of creating links is to drop into PHP and echo out the results of a function named site URL, and that will automatically give you the root URL of your current WordPress site, and then anything we include as an argument gets added onto it. So we can just say /aboutus, let's save that. And now even if I go back to my home page, when I click on this About Us link, we are in business. Next, why don't we set things up so that if you click on this logo in the top left corner, it takes you back to the home page. So up at the top of header.php, just a couple lines down from the opening header tag, we see this H1 with a class of school logo text. And all we need to do is change this link's href value. So delete the placeholder hashtag, and then there's no sense in typing out that same code again. So let's just copy and paste what we set up down here from the opening PHP to the closing PHP tags. Copy that, back up here in this href value, paste it. Except this time we don't want to link to the About Us page, so we can simply call the function and not pass it any arguments whatsoever. And that will give us the root or home URL. So I'm on About Us, and if I click that logo, we're on the home page. Cool. Now let's do the same thing for a few of the links in the footer. So this should take us back to the home page, About Us, and Privacy Policy. So in the text editor, jump into your theme's footer.php. The first H1 that we see should link us back to the home page. So here's the A element and here's the href. So just delete the placeholder hashtag and then paste in your clipboard. This should point towards the home page, so let's delete this argument. So the parentheses are empty. Okay, and then down here, let's set things up for the About Us link in the footer. So delete that, paste in our clipboard. Perfect. Let's scroll down a little bit. Here's the privacy policy link. So delete that placeholder, paste in the clipboard. Change About Us to privacy policy. Cool, so if we save that, now we can use the links in the footer to jump around. Okay, so at this point, we now have a basic interior page template up and running. Now we can circle back to this little breadcrumb box here, because this box makes 0 sense on a top-level page like privacy policy. However, imagine we want to have sub-pages or children pages on our site. So for example, maybe on our About Us page, we want to have 2 children pages, our history and our goals. Well, in our very next lesson, that's exactly what we're going to learn about, parent and children pages, and how to work with them on the front end of our website. I know this lesson we just worked through and the one right before it, they were not tons of fun. They're probably 2 of the most boring lessons in the entire course, but we had to get up and running and working with the same page templates so you and I are in sync. From here on out, there won't be as much mindless copying and pasting. We're going to get back to truly educational content. So let's keep things rolling, and I will see you in the next lesson.